In the name of Almighty God, the gracious, the merciful. Respected participants, today our topic is Romanticism, Romantic era, and what is difference between Romanticism and Classicism. So we'll be talking about what is Romantic era. Prior to start my lecture, let me introduce you. My name is Ghafoor, and I'm working as an English lecturer. I am the founder of History English Literature Group. Today our topic is Romantic era, Romantic poetry, Romanticism and Classicism. Let's talk about the Romantic period. Romantic era started 1780 to 1850. So the main writer of Romantic era is, you could say, we talk about the Romantic poets. They are you could say William Blacks, Wordsworth, Shelley, Byron, Keats, Lamb, etc. So on Romantic or Romanticism, they have influence of French revolutions. They have influence of American revolutions. And if we define Romanticism, it is reaction of industrial revolutions, and it shows the effects of industrial revolutions, how industrial revolution has monopolized human feeling, human idea, human perceptions, way of thinking, way of doing things. All that we find in Romantic poets and Romantic writers in their work. Romantic era started, you could say, late 18th century and early 19th century. So we have different writers in Romantic eras. If we talk about the salient feature of Romantic traits or Romantic era, so we have in a salient feature or salient traits of Romantic writers. We'll find emotions, feelings, imagination. They people talk about the imagination, feelings. We find in their poetry, if we talk about Wordsworth, we find that he idolized nature, he loves nature, and he started writing poetry on nature's use simple diction, simple people, vulgar people's language is quite rustic and we can understand easily. The second thing we find in Romantic writers, they are close to the nature, they idolize beauty, nature, simple thing, and they are, you could say, contradictions of logic, reasons. As the classicist, or you could say classicist, they believe one should use logic, reasons, follow Greeks, Romans and their way of writing, style of writing. It is a totally, you could say, contrast between the classicism, classicist writers who believes in Roman, Greeks, their way of writing and old ancient styles of writings, and they reject logic, reasons, rather they use, you could say, natural ideas. So if we talk about the salient features, we will find revivals of medievalism. We have a touch of medievalism in Romantic poetries or romantic poets. If we talk about the natures, Romantic poets, they love natures. As Wordsworth defines poetry, overflow of powerful feelings. Overflow of powerful feeling recollected in tranquility. It means that whatever emotions, feelings, they impulsively gives ideas. So you inspire or you get inspirations from natures, and nature inspires you to write poetry. We find in Romantic poetry lyricisms and subjectivity. People use, the writer of Romantic era, Romantic times, they use simple diction, simple people, simple way of life. They idolize it, they write it, they inspire from it. They start writing on simple people and use this. They use simple diction, simple poetry. So people can, a layman can understand their poetry, their way of work, their way of writing easily. So we find, and we also find in romantic poets, exotic idea, you could say, they exoticizing, and they use familiar thing, they use simple thing so that people can understand things. They use surrounding thing so that people are familiar with them and they understand them easily. Exotic word, they use imaginations, beauty, and imagination is the primary thing to write poetry in romantic poets' work. Romantic poets and writers, they use imagination, they use primary imagination, secondary imagination, they use nature, beauties. We find in John Keats' work beauty. He idolized beauty and he writes something on beauty, as in the case of Wordsworth. He idolized nature. He considered nature as a soothing, comforting, and you could say healing elements. Even it's guiding. It has an element of guidance, and it has a supernatural element that leads towards goodness. So all that we find in Wordsworth poetry. And if we compares and contrast between romanticism and classicism, in romantic we follow feeling, emotions, and natures, and writers follow all that. But when we talk about the classicism, they follow logic, reasons, and they write according to logic and reason. If we talk about the romanticism, they follow spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings. They consider poetry as spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling recollected in tranquility. But when we talk about the classicism, they do not follow the spontaneous overflow of powerful feeling, rather planned logic, reasons. They write with logic and reason. And in classicism, poets, writers, they write following the traditions of the great writer of the past, ancient Greece writers. They follow